builds a great wall. And nobody builds walls better than me. Believe me, and I will build them very, very inexpensively. I will build a great wall on the southern border. And I will make Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words. That's one of the leading visions of our era, Donald Trump, for his campaign. Another quote. What you don't realize is when you build a wall, you actually build it around yourself. That was a morning discussion on the bus yesterday with Stephen Stenning, Director, Culture and Development, on his opinion on Brexit. I think all this really shows us to what extent our vision and what we do and how we think impact the world, and to what extent we have responsibility versus vis-a-vis versus walls. So these two references really build the legitimacy of having this session on mobility, which is like, I call it like the lettuce in a diet where you really have to eat it. So it's one of the most boring subjects usually in gatherings like this, but what we want to tackle try to do in this panel is to explore it more in a conceptual way, really like widening mobility into the concept of movement in general, into accessibility, in how to be creative, in being open, also in toppling walls around us. So, mobility is about results and long-term impact, so not just traveling across borders. Mobility promotes dissemination of fresh ideas and values, understanding of other cultures and traditions, as well as mutual learning. Supporting programs contributes both directly and indirectly to work opportunities for artists and cultural professionals, thus benefiting employment in the cultural sector and promoting growth in the wider economy. For many arts and cultural professionals in Europe and the MENA region, mobility is an integral part of their working lives. Internationally, mobility programs and schemes increase opportunities for creative encounters, exchanges and access to new markets, collaboration and innovation. The circulation of artistic work contributes to sharing of values of creativity, extending audiences, distribution channels, cultural goods and services, far from the point of production, beyond national borders. Mobility is an integrated an accelerator of the value chain of arts, which includes education, training, creation, production, dissemination, distribution, documentation, media, art critic, and protection and preservation. Is this really as evident as it appears? So this is what we're going to see, because not all the panelists share that this statement is true. And this is very exciting. I will start with my guest, so Jumana Al-Yasri, who is one of Syria's, I would say, I don't know, it's very difficult to say. Jumana is Iraqi, Syrian, Parisian, or really, the way she identifies herself is a Bedouin. Jumana Al-Yasri is one of Syria's cultural leaders. She is the director of Sundance theater program in the MENA region, among many other things she does, on research, on collaborating with many partners around the globe. And I think Jumana will start speaking. So I won't be introducing everyone to this. So Jumana, being a Bedouin, would you tell us about your opinion about how mobility contributes to a better world?
Yes, I started identify. ليش عم بحكي إنجليزي؟ عارف. آخر سنتين من حياتي قررت إني.
Years, I decided to identify myself as a Bedouin and to deal with the issue of mobility and migration as an optimal way, a situation to work in the cultural field in the 21st century. I will not be talking about the visas. I'm Iraqi Palestinian from Damascus, from Paris. I deal with the U.S. institution. I only face problems in mobility between one Arab country and the others. There are some Arab countries that I cannot visit at all. When we talk about mobility in the Mediterranean Sea, we always think from south to the north, but the south is very thorny and complicated, and it's more complicated than the north. I think that we are living in a world where we have to think about mobility in a different way. To think, maybe we have to think to shift the question from repositioning and isolation, I think, and neutrality. We have to reformulate the question in a different method, relocating displacement instead of mobility. I'm saying this in English because it's very clear in my mind concerning these terms, and I think that it is highly essential for us and for the institutions to reconsider their role. They do not have to work on attracting artists, but as well to reach the artists, to deal with the artists. So we do not consider that X person cannot obtain a visa or is a refugee or a displaced. So regardless of all these, the situation of the artist, we have to go to the artist and deal with them and work with them. So these are mainly the main points I wanted to raise, and they are issues of concerns for me. The exile and the Syrians' presence in Europe, the mobility as a thorny issue. How does it affect the work of the artist on the essence of the work? So we are talking about mobility over the 3 past days. We have been talking about networks, financing, and other relevant issues, but we don't have to forget that what's real and what essential is the creativity and the relation between the artist and the audience. Thank you. Iyad Hosami. A theater maker and director of Masrah Ensemble. When you came from the US and I met you on the British Council, I asked myself, Iyad, what are you doing here after you have extended your theater research in the USA? You have worked on Saad Alawanou's text and you started participating or sharing ideas with the artists. So you tried, since you returned to Lebanon, to share your ideas with all the relevant stakeholders. Iyad, where are you today? And I have heard that you think of yourself, you declare yourself as being a farmer. You are an independent person. So what about the relationship between the fact of being a farmer and from one side and the decision to be
Thank you for the introduction. So I actually, before speaking about the farm, I wanted to just begin, I guess it was Stefan who took us back to the 90s, and I'd like to propose to take us back 90 years ago, at a time when an artist living in Gaza could take a train to Aleppo, and from Aleppo continue on to Baghdad. Since that time, of course, we've seen the decimation of regional infrastructure in the region, the parcelization of the lands and communities, first achieving its greatest form with the occupation of Palestine, and now we see it reaching new heights in Iraq and coming soon to a theater near you in Syria. So when we think about mobility, I think we have to maintain a historical perspective. and also consider mobility on not only a historical scale, but also reconsider it on a geographic scale. I have asked myself, as an independent theater maker and as the director of a very small nonprofit organization in Lebanon, why is going to Avignon glorious? Why does the theater company from Saida highlight that they are going to Kampala and not tell us about the work that maybe they're doing in Majdamuin, which is actually the village that they reside in? And so I'm really interested in the incentives driving, motivating artists and organizations to move, how, and where. And I like to consider mobility in Lebanon, actually, and I think Sahar, and she's still in the room here, gestured to this earlier today, as actually an urgent national and subnational priority. And I like to consider mobility on a neighborhood level. I like to think about it within the city, and then much more broadly on a nation-state level. I also like to ask about the mobility of audiences, which goes hand in hand, I think, with the circulation and the dissemination of artworks and performances. What responsibilities, as Juman was alluding to, do we have as artists and institutions, not only to encourage mobility of the makers themselves, of the works themselves, but also to circulate audiences in new and creative ways, and how can we go about doing that? With regards to the farm and why I've made this decision, so 6 weeks ago, in order to stay in Lebanon, I am a Syrian multinational. However, it's very difficult to stay in Lebanon. On the long term, if you are not Lebanese, as many people in the room are familiar with, and Syrians in this country mostly either have two choices: one, to live under the radar, or two, to subscribe to what is known as the kafala system, which is an indentured servitude system that's been in place for decades, governing the movement and rights mainly of migrant laborers from countries like Sri Lanka, Ethiopia, and Nigeria. I made a decision to enter into the system as an agricultural worker, and so I now split my time between the city and the farm, and I'll talk more about the farm after lunch.
Okay, that's thank you, Ian. Marianne is a militant for mobility. Militant really for how many years? 29? No, 20. She was the General Secretary of IETM for 19 years. Correct me if I'm wrong. She's a co-founder of Roberto Shimeta Network. She has been all over the place and around the world and identifies herself as weed. I believe, Marianne, you've been hallucinating a lot too much about the issue of mobility. Is it how ethical it is, how needed it is? You even dare to call it crap, which is very interesting. Would you tell us more about how do you see the issue of mobility of artists and art destination and artwork mobility also as a priority or not today?
Okay. That was a joke when I said, do you want us to say mobility is crap?
I'm being controversial.
Okay. Thank you. I'm the person with the whitest hair here, so I'll continue along the historical perspective a little bit. Yes, I was very honored to be able to work with IETM for 19 years, and being a member before that. And I just want to describe a little bit about the evolution of artistic mobility, which is not mobility in general, but artistic mobility, that is to say the moving of artists and arts organizers for professional purposes. In the late 80s and the early 90s, there was a kind of euphoria. People in the independent sector were getting stronger in Europe. They were meeting each other. They didn't anymore have to meet each other only through their ministers of culture. They could meet each other on a face-to-face, eye-level, equal setting. And people were very excited. Just to give one glimpse of that, in 1989 the Berlin Wall fell. People, cultural operators, artists in the Soviet countries had not met each other. They were very excited to be able to meet each other. People in Western Europe also did not have quite the facility to meet each other. And it was very inspiring. Oh, are you interested in that too? So am I. You have that problem too? So do I. You're producing this play. That's a fantastic play. I'm very interested in that. Is there a translation? So there was this kind of euphoric idea about mobility, and yes, several people became kind of militants for supporting the awareness raising on the political level of the importance of the facilitation of artists to be able to travel and meet one another. We did a lot of work. We raised awareness, we changed legislation, we looked at the differences between the countries, and we tried to look at contracts, the statute of the artist, so that artists and cultural operators could move from one country to another for short or longer time lengths much more easily. We also set up in 1989 through IETM. One of the founders of IETM was Roberto Ginetta. He was a very much beloved Italian festival director and theater director. He died in 1989, and IETM set up the first version of the Ginetta Fund, which was to help Eastern and Central Europeans travel by giving 10% of our membership income to this fund. And then in the early 90s, mostly on the urging of Beirut, who was then the director of the same festival that Roberto had founded, said, look, let's do the same thing with the fund, let's change it from Central and Eastern Europe, and let's look at the artists and cultural organizers around the Mediterranean Sea, so the south of Europe and the southern shore of the sea. IETM at that time was constantly getting phone calls. Remember phone calls? From people who were saying, do you know this? Do you know that? How can I do this? How can I get money for that? And we said, look, we usually don't know, but we know the person who does know. And from that constant request for information, we set up the web resource for artist mobility on the move. So in this euphoria, lots of artist mobility, and suddenly the artists started saying, wait, there are some problems with this. I just said to Hassan this morning, he was one of the first people who said, hang on a minute, if we're traveling, if we're touring all the time, we're losing the bond that we have with our local audience. So that was felt certainly by some artists. And it's true that there are some companies that we still know today who are constantly on the road, and they do feel a loss of the bond with the local audience. The second was the discussion around the loss of artistic specificity. So is there kind of international art? Is there a European art? And the third problem which came up was climate change. If our business model, as Hassan was talking about, if our business model is based on co-production and touring, this is something that Pete Hippens is still in the room from the Kai Theater. He spoke about this very eloquently. Then what are we doing? We're using all these planes all the time to shift personnel and freight and all the rest of it, and this is not exactly what we want either. So the problems started to come up. The fourth thing is that artists started saying, well, we don't have a choice anymore. Mobility is no longer a choice. It's an imperative. In order to fill our CVs, in order to look good, in order to get the interest of programmers, we have to have this international resume. So these are some of the problems that came up. But before I stop, because I actually want to acknowledge the problems, but I also want to acknowledge a deeper problem which we've been speaking about a little bit throughout the days. We can critique mobility, and I think we will here, for sure. But we have to realize that now, I've lived in 4 countries for considerable numbers of years. In all of those 4 countries, the political debate is becoming, we don't want any foreigners whatsoever. Theresa May in the UK, in her political party conference yesterday, said that world citizens are not citizens. They're nowhere, they're nothing, and basically we want UK citizens in our country. So even if we want to critique artistic mobility here today, which we could do, I think we also have to start to be careful to defend it in terms of all the values that we share to do with mutual understanding.
Thank you, Marian. We will come back to discuss those issues on a more tangible note. Mustafa Said, مرحبا. نعرف عنك. اوكي. مصطفى فنان وبنفس الوقت مؤرشف. هو مدير مؤسسة التوثيق والبحث في الموسيقى العربية يلي مقرها أرمة الحمراء، وهي مكتبة مفتوحة للجمهور، فهي نوع من أنواع المتاحف المحلية، خلينا نقول أو الأسرية. مصطفى ملتزم بالتجميع والتوثيق والمنهجة كل ما يتعلق بالصوت في المنطقة العربية، واليوم هو مقيم بلبنان. مصطفى شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you for your presence with us. Do you want to share all the ideas you have related to the mobility? Because I think that your main goal is to go and to collect the archive. In fact, the roots of this issue are not new, because I have prepared something, and I said that when I was a teenager I learned that when I was in cultural institutes and artistic institutes, I've learned that the musician, even if he is active, his success will be still limited, and he will only be acknowledged as a successful musician if he if he makes his first concert in Europe. To the extent that one of my professors told me one day, despite all your popularity in my own country, I haven't felt the true meaning of success. I only felt the success when I had my first concert in Europe. End of quote. Another quote from a dialogue between a musician and me, a brilliant musician. I quote, do you think that 8 hours per day are enough in order to access a certain level of technicity and professionalism in playing music? I think that you have to find a better profession for you. Another profession, because all what I'm doing is illegal and I cannot change anything. This dialogue was surprising for me, and what's more surprising is that this idea is more spread than we do think among musicians in our societies. A last quotation, a lecture quote from a professor addressing his students during the rehearsals before a concert. You know, all the Arab music product is useless and is not up to the level. Back then, I was surprised because Franz Liszt did not consider himself as true musician or music composer, because the professor was establishing a comparison between Arabs and the said musician. That's why I started my researches in order to see why the majority of musicians or artists do think that they are not up to the level, they are inferior to others, and they think that in their civilization and in their heritage, they think that their heritage and their productivity are lesser than the others. They are categorizing themselves in terms of music and music production. And why are they? Why do they have this problem with the other? Why do they think the other as superior to them? And the main constant and problematic of Ibn Khaldun came back to me, because Ibn Khaldun used to say, when talking about civilization is very important, he said that the integrity and of the human being is being re-questioned. And he said that injustice is really spread in our countries. In fact, the direct reason for development and for imports is very important in terms of artists and music in particular. In fact, development based on eloquence is unpresent and inexistent, and this is in fact what led me to try to open the door for the development of music and different rhythms, and that's why I formed Al-Asil group in 2003. As for the issue of mobility and state and the difficulty of mobility between one state and the other, in fact, the state and its modern state, in my view, in my opinion, is related to racism and discrimination. In fact, having to obtain a visa to go from one country to the other, regardless of the openness of the state and the non-discriminatory laws of the said state. In fact, when we have to be granted, let's say, aller to a certain country, is in its own way a discriminatory issue. And it's an attempt, it's a violation to human rights and to human freedom. Finally, in order to be brief, I think that we have the rhythm is an expression against an expression of resistance against the oppression. I started classifying this work 10 years ago. I used to think that it was a kind of migration, but when I read an article of Mr. Ala Abdel Fattah in Egypt, when I read his article on isolationism, I found in this article a true definition of the state we are living, in which we are living, and the state and the situation of a minority of students of the society who are refusing oppression. I was glad to the fact that the audience in the West were honored by Abu Talha's rhythm. They are started singing with me in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Syria. These songs. Burda's version was spread in London. But I think that I would be more happy if this version was launched in our nation, in our Arab region, because one of my colleagues contacted me from Cairo telling me that Lebanese authorities refused to give him a visa, to grant him a visa after he was able to buy an airplane ticket in order to attend Tawahhud, despite the fact that the population in Lebanon, whose authorities refused to grant a visa for one of the audience in order to attend the celebration, the population is the first to have embraced the idea of development from inside, and they really appreciated the rhythm, this rhythm and this celebration. I think that you've all got my point. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. I am not against mobility. I want to go to present my words among my own population, and not in Europe only. I have a passion to go in Europe, but before I want to present my works and my product in our own country. I will leave you now with the rhythm, not now, maybe later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your melodies, for your rhythm, and thank you for sharing your rich experience with us. We will listen to it later on, actually, after the break. Najma Al-Haj from Morocco, from Algeria, and from the Maghreb, from the bigger Maghreb. Najma, you're welcome. After we heard different opinions about mobility, please introduce yourself. Actually, you're well known. You're Najma, you're a star. As the writer Yassine wrote about you, you are also full of ambiguity. You come from that part of the world, from that beautiful part of the world. And you work also on contemporary art. You are a curator and assessor, and you have participated in many festivals. You have also prepared many performances and performing arts, and you are passionate about theater and dancing. Can you please tell us a little bit more about your experience and the challenges you face with mobility as being a cultural pioneer from the Arab Maghreb?
Thank you very much.
شكرا جزيلا لك. It's true to say that Algeria, Morocco and Tunisia are one place, لأنني أشعر أنني من عدة بلدان وأنا she's speaking in English.
And I am close to artists, I am close to cities. I usually do discussions sometimes with my friend that I prefer to, on program I curate, to put cities instead of countries, and that's significant for me. So mobility for me in my work and in my relations to work and to process is a drive, is more a question. I take it as a drive for I will call it a drive for creative process, a drive for critical conversation. Why I am saying critical conversation is because I found it very important today that we can support, make it visible, do the process, I mean, be with the process, with the artistic process, but in a critical, constructive discussion. I do think that sometimes there is a lack of being within the process, being with, and not only looking at the end project that can move from one place to another. The second issue for me for mobility is that it's this notion of mobility can question notion of time within the artistic process. We know that creating needs time. It has its own time. It needs sometimes solitude. It needs sometimes to take distance from the other. But we are in the region, in our cities, we are in a very transformative and a very tense time, a very fast time, involving a lot of dreams, illusion, tears and joy, drama, separation, conflict. So, and also I have seen, being in Marrakesh and having the chance to work with the festival Namshi في Marrakesh, معاكم في الإزيديو, being in Cairo with DCAF and working with the team and with all the people involved there, I could see that this time is questioning us. And before moving artists or team, we have also to be very conscious, or at least question this notion of time when we go from one city to another city. It doesn't mean for me from Europe to our countries. Sometimes going from Cairo to Casablanca is a big trip. Is 2 words. Is completely like artists, when they have the possibility, when mobility gives them possibility to take time and be there instead of presenting only. So I always like that artists can, as Leila Suleiman did with Dream City. Dream City has this way of working, and other projects also, that you have time to get in the city and to get a kind of sounds, and that your body take it, and that you can that you can give in a very constructive manner. So those notion of time, of transformative time of our region, notion of resilience. What is interesting what are we going to, why are we having all this light on this artist, on this work? Why? Why are we interested? Why are we here? Why I am here? It's because they are giving us, they are sharing with us, they are confronting us with new languages, with المادة مهمة. They have concern that let us be together. This concern, this urgency, this their way of resonating and translating reality and giving poetry, like Tanya Khoury and so on, like many. So those interested us because it's add to our, what we know, to our universal universal languages, and that's also give them value, not as ambassador of Egypt or Lebanon, but as artists too.
شكرا لربطك موضوع الموبيليتي بموضوع الوجود والحضور والمعنى. نفتح المجال للموجودين للأسئلة.
For the audience, whether you have questions or reflections or even reactions. So for this first part of our panel, we tried to shed the light on the problems, the challenges, the thoughts, the trends of thoughts, what is being thought again about mobility. Later on in the second part, so that you have an idea about the management of the session. So in the second part, the discussion will be focused personally on initiatives and projects that our speakers are working on, and at the same time all the audience will be able to participate. They can speak. You can speak also about the initiatives and projects that you have, so that we can really enrich our session on the practical side. So now about what you've heard about mobility. What do you have to say, Layla? I don't know if it's a question or not. But when it comes to criticizing the disadvantages of mobility, you forgot to mention something. It's the form or the structures that exist now and give the opportunity to artists to be able to produce. Mobility is actually one of our main opportunities so that we can continue working. And sometimes our mobility is what actually help us to present things for free in our countries. So the art residencies. Yesterday, for example, when Christelle was mentioning her work, sometimes this is linked to the diaspora that we have, but it's also an opportunity to find new arts, especially when you're speaking about performing arts. On another hand, under our governments or under the relationships with our governments, we see that mobility sometimes makes it a problem for us. So this is an opportunity for us to stay in our country and to present what we have in our country. This is also a form of continuity. Thank you for linking mobility to production and to see how it's important to production. Iman? I would like to criticize a little bit what Marianne has said when she spoke about mobility and where we are today from our audience, and to which extent we take audience into consideration. Sometimes I see that people don't ever stay in their country. For Palestine, for example, and are these the same people that are leaving their country, then later on there is no opportunity for those who stayed? In our gatherings, are we trying to speak to other people, or are we only speaking to each other and to the people that are the only people that are capable of moving around and traveling? So this is also problematic. So where am I expressing? How am I expressing the local while I never stay in my country and I don't know what's happening in my country, and I work more on the regional and international level? So how can I say that while I never stay in my country? Thank you. حسنا نأخذ سؤالا آخر. Layla, did you address your question to someone in specific, or was it general? Iman, your question was for Marianne. Yes, Mr. Hussein. We have also the other things the other way around. Sometimes our governments insist that the invitation come to the ministry, and then the ministry decides which group it wants to send. So this is changing a bit by bit, but the festivals also decide which people they want. Now Marianne said that she has gray hair and she has the right to speak about history. I have also gray hair and I want to speak about something historical that happened in the Roberto Shimeka meeting in Beirut when I proposed two things and people thought they were really weird and strange. And I asked them, is it possible to use Roberto Shimeka Fund to invite people from the north to come and visit us? So they really liked this proposal and they were surprised, although for me it was something evident. And my second question was, could we use this fund to be able to go to Morocco, or do we need to go beyond the Mediterranean to the north? They also thought it was something surprising and weird, and they thought that my questions were really original and that was something new. And actually someone said to me, we thought that you wanted to send your artists and your lighting artists to Shabuna in Berlin to learn how to use the modern equipment that are not working in Egypt because of electricity problems, power problems, and other things. So they thought that they wanted the Western's experience when they go to Ghana, for example, and then they have power cuts there. Thank you, Mr. Hussein. Unfortunately, I won't be able to take questions now. Let us listen first to the answers. Do you have reactions, answers? Marianne, there was a question that was directly addressed to you.
Okay, so Najma, Marianne.
Najma and Marianne. Jomana can... Okay.
I don't know. I said the same thing as
Okay, Jumana, please.
My answer is quite general. For 3 interventions now about production, mobility, and the economic dimension that you have mentioned, and the necessity to go abroad like Europe. And then come back to our region. I think this is true and this is reality. I personally worked on the yacht from 2011 until 2014, and there was a grant for mobility, but they wanted this mobility to be south-south mobility, so from an Arab city to another Arab city, and in 3 or 4 years we didn't receive any application. We had maybe only 1 application from an Egyptian guy who wanted to go to Baghdad. That was the Arab capital, Arab cultural capital, and of course we agreed to his application because only having initiated this was something important. Microphone please, so that we can translate. Answer, the wages, yes, but this is something that I don't have an answer to. It depends also on our partners between different entities. We spoke about partnership and networking. We need this partnership between the entity that is supporting the travel and then the money, and also we have the Roberto Shemeta Fund, and we always have this question about if we cover the travel costs and the visas, and there is always a question about the per diem, and if we do give a per diem and if we participate in money for the rent or not. So there are things that we can do, but there are other things that are not under our specialty. As for people who always travel and saying that we always have the same people traveling here, maybe I can blame a little bit the director of festivals and of cultural spaces in Europe and around the world, because they're lazy. Allow me to say this. They're lazy, and sometimes they see this or that artist and theater spectacle on an avenue or it's a festival, and they say that's the one, so he's labeled or she's labeled, and then we will have them in all the festivals. At least in the coming 3 years, after they have seen them in one show, they will have them for 3 years in all the festivals. So there are people that are lazy, and here we go back to what was said yesterday in the morning about how we see ourselves and how others see us. Also based on my personal experience, when in the past year we had applications for Theater Lab in Morocco, we were attacked because there was a fear of Syrians not being able to participate. So to whom this mobility is, who can participate in this mobility, we need to think about this. Thank you. Thank you, Jomana. It was really useful to speak about your rich experience. Yes, Ayham. Najma will speak later on. So please, all those of you who have questions, please raise your hands now. Oh my God. Can your questions please be only 1 or 2 words, or maybe a quick question, not long interventions, because we will have another round of questions afterwards. And the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we have the right for mobility. The problem here is that there are strategies or trends so that the mobility, especially for artists or even regular citizens, but especially for artists, we see that there are visas being refused and rejected. For example, in the Arab region, for the Syrians can go maybe to Egypt but not Jordan, now Palestinians cannot come to Lebanon, etc. So mobility programs, whether in the Arab region or abroad, they focus more on the money, on air tickets or visa fees, but they don't think about how they can help them with this mobility. So the first idea is lobbying and also networking. So when an artist needs mobility, they need to have the visa. So here they need support and lobbying so that later on this can have an impact. The second idea is to work on networking, on local networking between the different institutions or associations that could be related to the Ministry of Culture or Ministry of Interior Affairs, so that they can solve the visa problem, but this is not existent. Thank you. There was someone before Abdullah. Yes, please. And then you, then Abdullah, then Hanan. I have a quick comment. In Lebanon, if we succeed in breaking the small mobility cycle inside Lebanon, we will be able to solve many other things. Because now the artists are only speaking to themselves, they're addressing themselves. So every 3 or 4 artists go to watch each other, and they are very far from the land of reality. And we have seen this a lot in Lebanon because we have so many problems. Like, for example, there is a bombing here, but there is a concert there for for contemporary art. Or then on Twitter, we see that here there are people who were there, and maybe 500 meters away, they were counting the casualties. So if we're able maybe to break the small cycle inside our countries, then this will be good.
Just a short comment on what has been said. Marianne talked about history together with Ustad Hassan about the question raised in Paul Village, and was present together with the other Arab colleagues and Europeans, and we asked almost the same questions: problems of visa, problem of who's going to go where, why, etc. I think from that time up till now, many things have changed. We have today a number of funds. Okay, Mawlid Thaqafi, Arab funds, I think I was expecting today more an evaluation of the work of these funding institutions to progress, to see what are the problems, what are the achievements, and then it's not relevant today to talk about the importance of mobility. It's already obvious. We know, we have all the reasons behind. We know the reasons behind the importance of mobility for artists, even in the same country, the region, south. But we need to, I think, I would expect more evaluation of what is being done now. Thank you.
Maybe we'll push it more into challenges. Abdullah or Hannah? يعني معكم دقيقة تمام.
طيب في شقين من النقاش فيما يخص التجوال له علاقة بالفيز والجانب المالي، واللي بظن فعلا لأنه يمكن فينا نسأل
and maybe we can still think about them, but there are also other questions related to art production and mobility, or maybe about borders. And it has become one of the art topics, and mobility is a part of them. So let's think with the institutions, what can we explore? And there is also a need to do this, as it is important to think about the artists that had to leave the region and go to Europe, and most of the time they can't come back to their region. And this is something that we're discovering more and more. So the artist assumes that his or her organic relationship still remains with the people that are still in the region, but no one tries to help him or her in facilitating their coming back. So we have this problem of removing artists from a certain context and depriving them from coming back to the region. Thank you, Abdullah. Rana and Hanan. I'll be real quick, but I have to discuss a little bit what Marianne said, and this is while understanding the reasons that push you to say this, and that we need to doubt why people need to be that mobile. And maybe I will seem very traditional and classical and maybe outside the context, but as long as one of the punishment in the Arab systems is depriving people from traveling, then of course I will always support mobility. I agree with you, and this is my personal opinion, that people who are always away from their environment and then they become a repertoire in all the festivals, then yes, I have a problem with this. But also this is a choice, this is the choice of the artist. They can live there 10 years and maybe after 10 years they might feel that they have lost something of the content and they will do a personal review. Thank you. What Iyad said meets what Abdullah said and what Rana said. We also need to think that the artist does not work alone. Nowadays, the audience is divided. If we think about the camps in Lebanon, whenever we want to have a small concert or work with the artists in the Bekaa, for example, you cannot imagine the complications that we face to be able to move people to go see a concert somewhere, and many people sometimes are stuck on the road in buses. Let me give you one example. Let's think about Wa'el Kaddour. After his mobility saga and his immigration saga, now he decided to reside in France. I know Wa'el very well. He is Syrian, he loves Syria, but he was forced to leave his country and go to Syria, and he wanted to work on his piece of theater, Violence. I think that the maximum he can do is create network between Berlin and Paris, and maybe come here to Beirut and present his show to a very limited audience. Maybe the audience will be bigger in Berlin, in Paris maybe a little bit smaller. So how can we take such an artist and say it's either mobility gives us money to produce or we want to produce in our country? So whatever the choices are, how can we break these cycles that are choking us and the audience? Let's take only one example, work on it and see how we can solve it. Yes, so that they can breathe and that they can have a personal choice. Yes, this is very important. Mobility should be a personal choice so that they can choose their own audience also. Najma, I will give you some time to answer, and then later on we will move to the second part to see what opportunities we have to develop this.
We still think that if someone is an artist is mature enough to do the choice, to work within a space and with a partner and to take the decision. He can be in Paris, in Berlin, or in Beirut, it's the same for me. It's depending on his capacity, on his evolution, on his decision. So we just support, let it happen, give him possibility. You know, تروح لمراكش ولا القاهرة. There is no space to work. There is no. We need to go to professional space, but those partners are not only giving us light and sound. There are people there that are really constructing conversation about artistic content. We experience this. So I'm not anymore in this, if the one out, the one in. We are part of the world. We are part of a very difficult world, and the artist is notre souffle. It's الشعر, la poésie, la musique. It's our possibility to question ourselves and to say, hey, our society, please share with us. Those people are doing a lot and giving us a lot. And it's for 1 or 100 for me is important.
شكرا نجمة. أنا حأعطيك هلا بنفس الوقت بتجاوب إذا بتحب تبدأ إياد وبتحكي لنا شوي عن شغلك أكثر، كيف جاوبت عن الأسئلة كلنا من خلال
these questions through your work, whether in ensemble, group, etc.
Well, as an artist, I strongly disagree with you. I grew up in the United States, I worked in Japan, and I worked in the EU, and I lived in Lebanon for 8 years, and I can tell you from first-hand experience that no, it's not the same when I make theater in Beirut or in Shatila or in Tokyo. It's quite different. With regards to the strategies that I pursued to try to integrate and promote mobility both on a local and an international level, the first is to create alliances between mobile citizens, so Europeans and Americans basically, with non-mobile citizens, which means in this context migrant workers, which means Palestinians living in Lebanon, Palestinians living in Syria. And you create alliances by forming and cultivating long-term collaborations and working always in translation at every single stage of the process. The second tactic, these are strategies that we've implemented through projects of Mesa Ensemble. The second tactic I would say is to form, to integrate mobility itself into the creative development process. What does that mean practically? So for instance, drawing it in the Ensemble Studio Theater in New York, or Theater of the Impossible in Baghdad into a 3-month playwright residency program, and forming links therefore between a playwright from Damascus with theaters in Beirut, with theaters in New York, and Baghdad, implicating them all in the development of this play, which later on was translated to 3 languages and published in 2. Finally, on a personal level, kind of addressing Hanan's question, how do we basically to look at small examples of the actions we can take. I would like to remind everyone that over the past 1.5 to 2 years, Lebanese villages, many Lebanese villages have placed banners in their main squares that read "Mamnoor Tajawal Suriyin Ba'd As-Sa'a Kaza," which basically means Syrians are forbidden from walking around after 7 o'clock in the evening. And so I think that we have a responsibility, first of all, as people who have the opportunity to do so, to put ourselves directly in confrontation with these obstacles, and to insist that making our work requires moving and integrating and incorporating those who cannot move, and those who are creating, who are facing these obstacles directly. So basically, and so practically speaking, I'll be talking after lunch about some examples of these projects.
Okay, thank you. Marianne, I'll give you the voice to tell us more about what are you working on now as a response to your thoughts on the issue of mobility.
Thank you. And just to say to Rana that I always criticize what I love the most. So I'm still a huge defender of mobility, whether that's reading the voices of people who didn't grow up in the same situation you did, or seeing the images produced by somebody who has seen different images in their life, or physical mobility of interacting with someone, and especially learning different languages. So I'm 100% there, don't get me wrong. Thanks to the man over there sitting looking at his computer, whose project inspired me before I met the man. For the last more or less 6 years, I've been working very much in the same model as Todd Lester, to be of assistance to artists who find themselves in serious difficulty because of the nature of their artwork that upsets someone, a government, a repressive element in society, some fundamentalist element of anything. And so I said to Alma that I can talk about mobility because, of course, I've worked on it for a long time, but I don't want to talk about it. I would much rather talk about this. And it's really, again, bringing the political into the work. So thank you also for bringing that political element. What is our responsibility? What we do is, if there's an artist in serious danger and they have to, for instance, move from one safe house to another in their city or in their country, we use the model of the human rights defenders, and we also use their resources. That is to say, the concept of taking this person out of the dangerous situation and putting them into a safe place for a short period of time. And the model that we use in the arts is that we find a scholarship for them or an artist residency for them, because then they can leave their country legally, and there's no stigma on it. It's not like somebody who's asking for political asylum straight away. And in that case, it's easier for them to go back as well. In doing this work, I get increasingly annoyed at two things. First of all, the model, also in the human rights defenders field, is very much that the people come to the West. So if I'm an artist, hey, who wouldn't want to go and live in New York for 3 months, on an artist residency? But on the other hand, not everybody does. And I think also in human rights, also in the arts, people are starting to say there should be more possibilities to create coalitions, local coalitions of artistic organizations who can protect, defend an artist, and make better conditions for artists in the long term. I'm just going to finish. And I know that Margaret has started to do that, and also the Geneva Fund is supporting that. But I'll talk about my own community in Europe as well, because I get really annoyed. The situation is getting better, but I get really annoyed at the artistic community in Europe who have the opportunity to perhaps host or support an artist who finds themselves in this condition, but the answer is, but I'm not sure about the quality, or I'm not sure it fits into my artistic concept. And my plea is, no matter where we're coming from, no matter which kind of artistic organizations we're leading, let's have a bit of solidarity. You don't have to put this artist at the top of your festival program. You can support them the same way that you would support another human being. And if we're not in solidarity in the arts field, and we're such a minority in our communities, if we're not in solidarity in the arts world, what the hell are we doing here? So my plea is that we start looking at the situations of artists who are in trouble, and we start looking at all the resources we have, even if it's a spare bedroom, even if it's a couch, even if it's moral support. The second artist that I worked with was a Palestinian photographer living in Syria, who had to leave in a hurry with his wife and child. He ended up in Poland. I didn't have any friends who were photographers in Poland, but I knew a lot of people in the performing arts. They welcomed the family, they supported them, they gave picnics for them, they contacted their press photographer friends, and they invited the guy for a week in Warsaw to introduce him to how it works in Poland if you're a press photographer. It's that kind of solidarity which I think is important.
Thank you, Mariam. Jumana, would you tell us more about the amazing work you've been doing in the past few months? I know that you've been jumping from one city to another. You are going to the artists where they are, you are asking them, you are digging into their needs, you want to build your program based on on this caravan mode, on this Bedouin statement you just announced. So would you tell us more what opportunities are you providing by doing this way, this approach?
شكرا. بس بدي أقول شيء اللي قالته مريم على
concerning what Marianne has said concerning the artists in danger. I want to launch a new initiative to be launched by the Mentorship Metcalf Fund entitled In Exile. So the title will be Fil Manfa in Arabic, in order to support organizations and associations in the Arab countries and in Turkey that are embracing the refugees for a period between 3 months and 1 year, because always when we think of programs in order to provide refuge for the artists in exile, we always think about Europe and other countries, but in fact in our region we have associations and organizations that need support. As for the theater program and Sundance Institute, we thought after the experimenting the theater lab in Morocco in last May, we thought of the needs and how to meet these needs, so we decided to go and visit the artists who are currently residing in Berlin in Germany, not only in so we will be focusing primarily on the artists who are present in Berlin, in the city of Berlin, in order to be able to work with them in Arabic to develop new theater plays and works. The idea behind this is to contribute in ensuring a safe haven and a safe environment for these artists to be able to work in the language in which they dream, within a certain community having same common concerns. In other terms, I'm talking here about the responsibility of institutions in order to be dealing with these artists. I am not directing or leading an institution. I'm working inside an organization, because Rana was talking about the agendas. Yes, I have an agenda inside the organization in which I work, and how can I benefit from the available infrastructure in order to be able to help others. Since I'm coming from the region, how can we disseminate these ideas and to participate with a larger number, deal with a larger number of artists? Yes, you are right. We still have 7 or 8 minutes. We'll be hearing an audio for 2 minutes and a half, and we still have 5 minutes allocated to those who have an initiative or an opportunity concerning mobility. So this is an exclusive, the intervention will be exclusively for those who have an initiative. أنا سوف أعطي الكلمة إلى من يودون لديهم فكرة أو مبادرة أو فرصة.
ممكن الكل اللي بده يحكي يرفعوا ايدهم. اوكي، 1 لا المبادرة
طيب انا هتكلم
وبعدها هنسمع الموسيقى.
انا هتكلم عن مشروع جديد احنا بنعمله مع مجموعة شركاء من المغرب العربي، هو اسمها
partners in the Arab Maghreb, which is the African Network for Cultural Mobility. This is a network encompassing Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia. And with one partner from Spain, we are trying to document the residency venues and the opportunities supporting cultural mobility in the region. We are mapping all the relevant resources, researches, and documentation on cultural mobility. We are on the kick-off stage. We have launched a website. It's not complete. but we have huge data concerning the region and the mobility from Europe and between the Arab countries and between these countries. Microphone, please. And the Arab theater group in Sweden, we are working on getting in touch with new artists to be able to deal, me as Helen, to be dealing with an artist whom I do not know, to be able to work together, and we are able to achieve this activity through the visual performance project for Arab speakers in Sweden, and we managed to get in touch with a director from Jordan and with Wael Kadrour, our partner, who drafted this project. So I think that we as Arab artists living abroad, we have the responsibility to be active in this field and to put pressure on European governments and European organizations in order to be able to attract these artists. So through Artistic Works, you are launching this initiative. Todd?
Hi everybody, this is just a teaser. Al-Mawrid Artist Safety Net will be announcing an initiative at the very end of the 4 p.m. session. It will be the content equivalent of a striptease.
You're challenging my panel now. Wahid?
I'm speaking as the board member of Roberta Chineta. We are trying to also include Iran to the areas where we support the Mobility Fund. It's not done yet, but in January 2017 there will be the first travel of Chineta to Tehran to initiate that.
Thank you, Wahid. Noor, you wanted to say something? Yes. Okay. That's on.
من ضمن المبادرات اللي اكتشفتها مؤخرا هي فرقة المنفى تبع مسرح غوركي ببرلين يلي عم يكون الفاعل
The main actor is a Syrian actor living, Ariam Agha living there. They were able to get in touch with two actors from Damascus, and they will be joining the group, including people, artists from Afghanistan, from Syria, and from other countries. I think that legally speaking, they were able to let these two actors join the group, and this was a huge initiative. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, just a couple of points. I found it interesting.
في الواقع هناك بعض النقاط المثيرة للبحث.
This word of network and work math and how. Okay. Yeah. Just how every work that you make creates a network, because now speaking, I'm a young choreographer from Iceland living in Belgium, so I'm speaking from this perspective. And just how every work generates a network, and I wanted just to mention what's now been a bit mentioned about the responsibility as an artist and about the solidarity with each other. Because what I feel as an artist working in the field is that there are also quite many opportunities which are networks which are already existing, but sometimes we tend to go a bit as individuals inside these networks. I have an opportunity and I use it for myself, and then I search for the next opportunity for myself. And I'm just curious, and I would like to just maybe suggest this as a discussion of how can we be more responsible for our solidarity? How can I use the networks which I created to each one of my work to share with others, and how can I make that and build a network, and how can then we take the responsibility a bit more closer to ourselves and not just depending on the other and on the institution. Could you speak about a lot of others? Yes, relationships together. And just a quick example,
Sorry.
Very quick, because I've been going to Iran for the past 2 years, because you mentioned, and I originally got invited to perform in an underground dance festival, and I could have just gone and performed and come back. But what I decided to do was to offer to teach a workshop, which I did. It's very short. I got in touch with a lot of artists, and then I've gone back for research, and now there are going people already that I know who are going and in interaction with this festival. And I'll pass my contacts to Wahid, who will pass it to you. And just,
so how do you follow up after the travel? It's about how do you follow up with to cascade the learning and share it with the
Maybe a simple metaphor, it's like if you think about it like planting a forest, you're all planting trees. And then we are coming and taking out the trees, but what if we plant the tree for the one that we take out? I don't know how to say that. Just share what you...
Thank you so much, and I apologize. We don't have enough time to give it. I think that the panel, you all had the opportunity to say your last word, but only Mustafa, your last word will be your music, unless you want to add something. Okay. Najma, I'll give you one last word in half a minute, if you want to say anything. Yeah.
I would like to say that if mobility can stimulate trust.
Amazing last word. ونترك أحمد مع لنا الموسيقى، نسمع الموسيقى ونطلع على اللانش. Thank you.